Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Brian Mickler. I'm your host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here today. We're going to talk about a very important subject, and that is the concept of quitting. I believe there's a right reason to quit, and I believe there's a wrong reason to quit. And I want to explain what I believe the distinction is. And I'm also going to share with you 5 unique questions that you can ask yourself to determine if the activity, the behavior, the engagement, the business, the whatever you're engaged in, the circumstances, if it's the right reason to leave or to throw in the towel or pivot, however you choose to look at it, or if it's the wrong reason and you should keep engaged and you should double down your efforts and keep going. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. Before I do, I just want to mention my good friends and show sponsors over at Montana Knife Company. Obviously, we're coming up on Christmas now, and you're probably looking for a great Christmas gift for somebody else. You might also be asked, what is a great Christmas gift for you? And I can't really think of a better thing than having an American-made knife in your pocket as an everyday carry, in your kitchen as tools that you use there when you're cooking for your family or friends, or even a hunting knife out in the field because you're getting after it this fall as you harvest your deer and moose and elk and caribou and pigs and everything else that you might be hunting this year. So regardless of why you might be looking for a knife, I would suggest you look no further than Montana Knife Company, 100% made in America by good people up in Frenchtown, Montana. So check it out, montanaknifecompany.com. And if you end up picking up either swag or a knife or anything over there, use the code Order of Man at checkout, and you'll save some money when you do. All right, guys, let's talk about the right reason to quit and the wrong reason to quit. Now, this was spurred because I had made a post on X the other day, and I wrote this. There are 2 types of quitting. Number 1, quitting a responsibility or commitment because you lack the skill set to navigate the circumstances. Number 2, quitting a thought or behavior because it no longer interests, serves you, and your goals. The latter is acceptable. The former is not. So to just sum that up, quitting a responsibility or commitment because you don't have the skill set yet. And I want to throw that caveat in there because you can learn the skill set. You might not have that skill set now, but you can learn it. And sometimes life gets hard, whether it's a marriage or a business or whatever it might be. Lacking the skill set doesn't mean that you should just quit. And I see too many men do this. They don't have what it takes to achieve. And so rather than developing the skill set required to achieve, they throw in the towel. And usually we justify our decision to quit with the second type of quitting. Oh, my heart wasn't in it. I didn't really feel it anymore. And that might be true. And if that is true, then that's a more viable reason to throw in the towel or to quit. I'll give you an example. I was doing financial planning before I was doing the Order of Man podcast, and it was good work. I liked the work for the most part. I felt that it was valuable. I knew I was serving other people, and yet I didn't lack the skill set to be successful in the business. In fact, I was fairly successful with my financial planning practice. And I decided to pivot into Order of Man because that's where my heart was taking me, and that's where my interests seemed to navigate and go. So I pivoted over the course of a year or so, and I made that change. But again, I didn't do it because I couldn't hack it or I couldn't cut it or I wasn't being successful. I did it because something else was speaking to me, had an interest of mine, and was calling to me. And that's the distinction that we need to make. And we need to be very aware with ourselves because it's easy to fool ourselves into believing that we're quitting for the right reason when you might actually be quitting for the wrong reason. I've thought about, are there caveats to this? And I really don't think there are. The one that came to mind is marriage. And let's take the qualifiers that I gave on this post that I made over on X. Number 2, again, I said quitting a thought or behavior because it no longer interests or serves you and your goals. We can throw a lot into that category. You could throw marriage into that category, for example. Well, it no longer interests me. So that might be the caveat to that rule, because I think as a society, we've become so flippant with our words, with our deeds, with our actions, and our level of commitment to responsibilities, duties, and obligations. But if we take that same circumstance, marriage, for example, And we run it through the first qualifier is quitting a responsibility or commitment, which I would say marriage is, because you lack the skill set to navigate the circumstances. And you know as well as I do that marriage is hard. I had a failed marriage. I did not want to quit in that marriage, but the marriage ended all the same. And part of that was a lack of skill set on my end to not only navigate the circumstances, but to build these interpersonal communication and foster and develop the growth that was needed in the relationship. So what I want to share with you now, guys, is 5 questions that you can ask yourself, because it's very easy to deceive yourself and make yourself believe that you're quitting something for the right reason when actually you're quitting it for the wrong reason. So I have 5 questions that you can ask yourself that will be a litmus test on whether or not you're quitting for the right reason or you should keep going. All right. So number 1, and these are in no particular order, but number 1 is this: is my feeling towards this thing temporary or sustained? Is my feeling towards this thing, and usually it's a negative feeling, is it temporary or is it sustained? Right? Because it's easy to be at work one day and just have a crappy day. You know, your boss is getting after you. Maybe you miss a deadline. Maybe a supplier or a vendor or an employee messes something up and it screws you up or makes you look bad. Maybe you have a poor interaction with a client or a customer. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong on a daily basis in a business. And those are just temporary things. I'm not saying they don't need to be addressed. They certainly do, but I'm saying they're fleeting. And if you're experiencing a bad day, I don't think that's a reason to throw in the towel. We all have bad days. We all have bad circumstances. We all do dumb things. We all get hurt. We have lawsuits. We lose our cool. We let our emotions get the better of us. We have a poor interaction with other people, family members or friends or whoever it might be. You and your wife, for example, you might get into an argument and have some hostility towards each other even that evening. That doesn't mean you throw in the towel. It just means that you had a rough night and then you correct it, hopefully that evening or the next morning, and then you drive on in the relationship. And it's better because you were able to resolve the conflict. But if you have a sustained feeling where it's just this constant nuisance, this constant annoyance, this constant bombardment of not enjoying what you do, being miserable, that's an indicator the same way that a warning light or a check engine light on your vehicle dashboard might signify to you that it's time to get your vehicle into the shop and figure out what in the world is going on here. If you're going into work today, maybe you're listening to this podcast as you're driving to work and you've been miserable for the past year, that's an indicator that there's something greater than, oh, I know I have to call this customer and have a hard conversation. That stuff just happens. So look at the thing and decide, is this temporary or is it sustained? And by the way, just because it might be sustained does not mean that you automatically quit. I'll explain that more. And that's why there's 5 questions, not just one. So again, is my feeling towards this thing temporary or is it sustained? Number 2, what does my gut, heart, soul, and or instinct tell me? Again, what does my gut, heart, soul, and or instinct tell me? Maybe even God. There's a lot of different names for our intuition, and this sometimes often difficult to quantify sense that we have. But I found, at least personally, that the more I listen to my intuition and my gut, the more right I usually am. And if my gut or my instinct is telling me that something's off or something's not right, I found that it's best to listen to that. And it may be hard to quantify. It may be hard to measure, to come up with a very specific reason as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling. But the reality is that you are. And we need to pay attention to this additional feeling, this instinct or our gut or our heart or soul or God or creator or however you choose to look at it. But it's crucial. What does your gut, heart, soul, and or instinct tell you? And I would also go back and just do a quick review of your life and come up with think about some of the biggest decisions that you've made in life. What you want to do as a career, who you want to marry, where you want to move. These are life-altering decisions that we're talking about here. And ask yourself, if you followed your gut, did it serve you well? And alternatively, if you did not follow your gut, how did that play out for you? Or how are you currently doing? So I think that question is crucial. And I think it's one that we don't often look into because a lot of the times I see this is that everything needs to be quantified and measured and specific. And I think there's certainly a time and a place for that. But there's certain things that I just can't explain. If I have a bad feeling about something, there's a reason I'm having a bad feeling about it. And I ought to be aware of it. And I ought to take it into consideration. Again, not the only factor, but certainly a factor. You see this a lot on social media. People, you'll say something that's common sense. The sky is blue. And immediately you'll have somebody say, well, where's your source? I don't, my eyeballs, I don't know. I go outside and I look and see that the sky is blue. And so people want to fight and bicker over nonsense at times. And they want the source. Well, not having the source or not really knowing why, but just having a bad feeling about something or a good feeling about something can oftentimes be enough. I choose to take other things into consideration, but that is a big factor for me, my instinct. All right, number 3, is there something that I can do to make this situation better? Because oftentimes I'll go back to a marriage, for example, or even a business. It doesn't matter, but let's take a marriage. Oftentimes we'll blame the circumstances on somebody else. In a relationship, it would be your partner. Oh, if only she would do this. If only she knew how hard my life was. If only she appreciated me more. If only she cooked dinner for me. If only we had sex more often. These are all sentiments that I hear, and I understand the sentiment. And I think all of those things might actually be an enhancement to your marriage. But if you're putting all of that responsibility on her, then it's safe to assume that you're not assuming as much of the responsibility as you possibly could. Intimacy is a great example of that. We're not having sex. We have sex once or twice a month, and I'd like to have it once or twice a week. Okay. Have you told her that? That's the first step. Have you guys communicated about it? That's where I'd start. Number 2, what do you look like? Are you 40, 50 pounds overweight? Have you let your hygiene and your health slip? Because if you have, that's not doing you any favors in the bedroom. Also, is there an emotional connection, or is it purely just physical? Because if it's just physical, she's not going to be into that. And I don't think most men for sustained periods of time are into that either. So how can you connect with her on a more mental or spiritual or emotional level than you currently are? Because if you can do that, then that's going to lead to more physical intimate moments with her. So the question then becomes, is there something I can do to make this situation better? If there is, then that's the starting point. The starting point is not, oh, well, we're not having sex enough, so I'm out. No, the starting point is doing what you can to improve the relationship and improve the circumstances. The counterexample might be something like a habit that is no good for you. Drinking, smoking, gambling, drugs, addiction, pornography. Is there something that you can do to make the situation better? No. There's nothing that you can do with regards to smoking that will make it better. Well, maybe if I smoked at a different time of day. Well, it's still damaging your body. It's still not good for you. There's nothing you can do about it to make it better. The only thing that you can do to make it better is to quit. Drinking is the same way. And I've been pretty vocal about my alcohol abuse over the past, I've been sober now for over a year, but prior to that, I've been open about my alcohol abuse. There isn't anything I could have done about that and continue to drink that would have made the situation better. The only answer was to abstain from alcohol. So if there are things that you're doing in your life that you're not satisfied with, and there's nothing you can do to improve the situation, that is an indicator that it's probably not healthy or good for you, and you should quit that thing. But if there is something that can be done, not by anybody else, but by you, then I believe that you owe it to yourself, not to anybody else necessarily, although there might be some responsibility there, but you owe it to you, yourself, to try that thing first. I talk about marriage a lot, saving a marriage. Guys talk about how to do that. Well, you've got to be able to work on yourself. And I wish I would have done that sooner. I wish I would have taken more of the burden of that sooner. And I think the situation and outcome may have been different. All right, let's talk about number 4. This is the 4th question. What is it that I really don't like about the circumstances? And can I search deeper? So what is it that I really don't like about the circumstances? And can I search deeper? So let's go back to the business example. Let's say that you are miserable at your job. You hate your job. You hate what you do. You hate your work. You hate emails. You hate the back end stuff. You hate the clerical duties. You hate all of these elements of it. The question is, do you hate the job or do you hate your current duties? Because there is a distinction. And a lot of the times we'll throw in the towel because we hate the current duties, but the current duties come with a position. So is there something that you can do, again, to go back to the previous question, to make the situation better? Sure. Delegate. Hire somebody to do the things that you don't like to do. I know that isn't going to work in every scenario, but that's certainly an option. I thought about that with podcasting. I love the medium of podcasting. I've been doing it for almost 9 years. I enjoy it. I find value in it. I find meaning in it. I hope it serves you, the people who are listening. But I don't like editing podcasts. I've never enjoyed that. And I used to do it myself. Our editor, Chad, does that now. So there was something I could do about the situation. And it wasn't that I didn't enjoy podcasting. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy having these conversations and serving men the way that we do. It was that I just didn't like doing the editing process. So I removed that from my plate. I hired Chad, a highly qualified professional, to do the podcast editing and publish it and get it ready for us. And there you go, problem solved, without having to quit. Just little pivots that we can make that will improve our lives and the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So what is it that I really don't like about the circumstance? I see this a lot in relationships. Oh, I hate my wife. Why? Because we don't communicate. Okay, then maybe you don't hate your wife. Maybe you just hate the way that you guys communicate. So rather than just saying, I hate my wife, is there an opportunity here for you to communicate better? If that solves the problem, great. That's way better, I think, than throwing in the towel and not having that relationship anymore. So again, the question is, what is it that I really don't like about the circumstances? And can I search deeper? Is there an underlying meaning that I really don't like? And if there is underlying meaning, like, no, I actually hate the work. I found that in my financial planning practice. I didn't enjoy the duties and responsibilities, but there came a point in time where I actually did not even enjoy the work of it. And at that point, I knew it was above and beyond just having to do the red tape and applications. It was deeper than that. And so I knew it's time for me to pivot because I'm no longer serving the clients that I made a commitment to serve. All right. The last question, guys, is the grass truly greener on the other side? How many times have you either heard this or adhered to this advice or this thought, this notion that, hey, that job over there, that's better. That woman over there is better than the one I currently have. That circumstance or situation, that neighborhood, that house, that car, that financial purchase, that fill in the blank is better than what I currently have. And what we do is we subject ourselves to unnecessary time, headache, heartache, expense, lost resources, burned bridges, broken relationships, because we think that the grass is greener on the other side. It might be, but I think it's really important that we determine whether or not that's truly the case. And the best thing that you can do in this situation, 2 things, I think. Number 1, take better care of your grass. If the grass is greener over there, then let's not compare ourselves and think, oh, I'll just go over there, because you're going to bring your problems with you. If you're in a relationship and that relationship breaks down because of fill in the blank, and you go into your next relationship without addressing the problem, you're going to bring your bad habits of not tending to your own yard into that next relationship. And then you're going to ruin that one. And then you're going to move on to the next one because you think, again, the grass is greener on the other side. It might actually be, but the reason is not because it's greener, it's because you're not maintaining your yard. You're not maintaining your grass. And by the way, let me be very clear on this. I am not pointing fingers at you guys. I'm actually looking at myself right now in a teleprompter in front of my video camera. I'm looking at myself. Tend to your own yard. If the grass is greener on the other side, then make your grass greener on this side by doing the required work. Interpersonal communication, learning how to communicate more effectively, learning how to understand your emotions, getting fit, getting strong, getting your financial house in order. The list goes on and on. Developing a new skill set that's marketable, that you can then go out and sell to somebody else so you can build and acquire wealth and abundance in your life. That's how you take care of your own yard. Now, look, if you take a peek and you know with 100% certainty that you are tending to your yard and the grass is greener over there, meaning there's more opportunity or more prosperity or more abundance, or you just like that kind of grass more than you like this kind of grass, as long as you've tended to your field, then that might be a decision why, hey, maybe it's worth looking into over there. But I found more often than not, once you start taking care of your own yard, you realize that you don't really care about the grass the next door neighbor has because yours looks pretty good and you're happy with what you have. So I hope that helps. I hope those questions give you a little bit of a litmus test to run your decisions through when you're deciding to quit. I see this a lot with relationships. I see this a lot with jobs. I see this a lot with job opportunities and guys trying to decide which job to take. Let me reiterate these five. Let me reiterate the tweet that I made first. There are two types of quitting. Number one, quitting a responsibility or commitment because you lack the skill set to navigate the circumstances. And guys, the antidote to that is question number three. Is there something I can do to make this situation better? Sure. Develop the skill set required to navigate the circumstances successfully. And then point number two that I made in that tweet, quitting a thought or behavior because it no longer interests or serves you and your goals. The latter is acceptable. The former is not. And then to go through those questions, maybe you're writing this down. Maybe you just need a reminder. Number one, is my feeling towards this thing temporary or sustained? If it's temporary, let's fix it. If it's sustained, maybe there's something deeper at play. Number two, what does my gut, my heart, soul, instinct, God, intuition tell me? And is it right? So we can listen to that. And I talked about doing an inventory on past decisions using your intuition. Number three, is there something I can do, not anybody said, I can do to make this situation better? Do that first. Always do that first before throwing in the towel. Number four, what is it that I really don't like about the circumstances? And can I search for deeper meaning? Because often the problem is not really the problem. You have to get deeper to figure out what the real issue is. And then the last question, number five, is the grass truly greener on the other side? And along with that, maybe consider tending to your own yard a little more effectively before worrying about what the neighbor's grass looks like. All right, guys, I hope that helps and I hope that serves you. Please let me know if it does and let me know how it does, or let me know if there's another litmus test that you use or something that you run your thought processes through to help you make better decisions in your life, because Lord knows we all need to make better decisions in our lives. All right, guys, we will be back to next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.